This one was good, guys. We talked about work and jobs. Listen for check valve. Jordan talks about how a check valve will let water go in, but it won't let it come back. That makes no sense, but in context, it makes total sense. Listen for that, because that's really when the podcast starts getting good. I hope you enjoyed it. Share it with your friends. Like, follow, subscribe, all the things. Bye for now. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Mr. Jordan Weaver, how are you?
Here we are.
Well, that's amazing. You got your phone up there. Are you watching the live?
I'm going to be reading comments.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And then I'm going to look up there, and then I'll probably put that down in a minute.
Yeah, cool. The topic today.
Did everybody see my new case?
The topic.
Okay, I'm ready.
Is work and jobs, or work/jobs.
Okay.
Just work.
Like occupations.
Like, yeah. There's a couple stats that stuck out to me about this.
Okay.
1/3 of your life will be spent at work.
Okay.
That's 90,000 hours over the course of a lifetime.
So you'll spend
average.
80,000 hours as an expert at something.
Sure. Yeah.
Isn't that the rule?
The 10,000 hours. Yeah. That makes sense. By the age of 30, most people will have 7 to 8 jobs, and 80% of workers hate their jobs.
Okay.
So with something so prevalent in our lives, the Lord had to have addressed it.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And I have another Timothy Keller quote for you.
Okay.
He says in his book, Every Good Endeavor,
Right.
in Genesis, we see God as a gardener. And in the New Testament, we see him as a carpenter. No task is too small a vessel to hold the immense dignity of the work given by God.
Okay.
So I thought that was cool to, start it off by saying like,
the dignity of work.
yeah, I mean, the Lord did address it, and it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So I guess, to start it off, put a hypothetical question in. What?
Let me ask this. 320,000 followers on Spotify, please. Okay. Okay. I would say this. I would say that a lot of people, I'd be curious what people's perception of work is, because I was really close with my grandpa, and he grew up just in the Depression era. And so his view of work was different than like my dad's generation. And my dad's generation's view of work is different than mine. And I've even noticed like the generation coming up behind me, everybody's got their own little scope or their view of work. And I think how you perceive what work is designed, like the design. For instance, if I show you a machine and you go, okay, I mean, I see that there's things and it looks really cool, but what does it do? I think that's what we have to me, this is what made a big impact in my life. This is where I went from like just working so that I had enough money to do the things I wanted to do to feel like I was actually pursuing a calling, was when I understood like what the machine was designed for, if that makes sense. So occupation, everybody had a job. Like when God gave Adam and Eve a job in the garden, that was in the perfect scenario. So that means that work was present when there was no punishment.
Right.
So, I mean, before we even get into it, I would say that the framework that just instantly jumps out to me is like, we have to understand that work came with a design. There is a how-to, there's an instruction manual, not of which job you do, but what is it designed for? If we can get there tonight, we'll have accomplished something.
Yeah. Jeez. I mean, just a general question is, if I had a job that I hated, but the money is really good, what should I do? Or what about the opposite? What if I loved my job but didn't get paid enough?
Yeah. So Isaiah talks about and I'm gonna butcher the details because I'm a big dummy and I just remember things in general senses. Okay. But Isaiah talks about in the end when everybody's bringing the fruits of their labor together as part of their like contribution to the kingdom, right? Like each corner of the earth, and they're all bringing what they've diligently I think the word is toiled for, and they're bringing it as an offering. And you go back to like the wise men when they come to Jesus, what did they bring? They brought the gifts of their endeavors, right? And that when we think of work, there's only two ways we can look at it. Either this is what I have to do to get what I want so that I can do the things that I like to do, which is, I would say, how many people hate their job? 80%? 80%. We're probably 80-20 on people who view work this way.
Yeah. This
is what I have to do. And the problem with that is, how much money could that job give you so that you're like, okay, I'm happy now?
Right.
It's a bottomless pit. How many people are watching it? 32. How many people would you say that are watching right now? Statistically, what's 80% of 32 someone?
somebody do it. Don't put math on me like that.
That statistically, 80% of the people watching this, they go to work because they have this life that they want, but to get the little bits and pieces of their job that pays them, the paycheck will never be fulfilling. They leave, and the job is a means to consumption. They have a desire to consume. The job lets them consume little bites at a time. Does that make sense?
Right.
20%, hopefully as high as 20%, view that the opposite. That says, my job is what I get to do to contribute. My job is how I contribute to my community or to my team. Like, God gives me this means that I can contribute and be meaningful to society. This is going back to my grandpa, who grew up in the Great Depression when jobs weren't prevalent. So if you got a job, it meant you were able to contribute. Otherwise, you were just, I mean, as much as you want to get away from it, you felt like a parasite because there was nothing you were doing to give back.
Right.
You were strictly attacked. And in our most primal state, if we're the biggest consumer in our group, we're the least valued. We're the least valuable person in our tribe if we're the biggest consumer. And so when you look at your job as, wait a minute, this is what I'm able to do. This is a skill or a trade that I've learned. And through this trade, I get to contribute to my family through a paycheck. It gives me something I can put my time into. I can excel. I make my little circle of the world better. It's a place where my choices can be brought out into the workplace and actually improved. And if you look at it that way, then the work itself is the contribution and it is the reward. And then you're like, oh, and I get paid.
Right.
But how many people actually view it that way?
Yeah. I mean, how many people know how to get into a situation like that?
How many people think that being a consumer is a happier life than being a contributor?
Right.
I mean, it's countercultural. It's counter-capitalistic to say, I want to be the biggest contributor.
Right.
Everybody wants to be the biggest consumer. And we think that if we can consume enough, there's enough consumption that could make us happy or fulfilled. And what we don't realize is we are naturally at our most happy and fulfilled and content when we're contributing. I've said it before. Everybody's probably heard this. Where is everybody tonight? 31, but nobody's saying anything. Jump on.
Strange. Don't just wait. That's a lot of dead air.
How do you like that? How do you like that? How does that feel when I just sit here and look at you and you're not? Sebastian Younger, he's not a Christian, he's not a believer, but he said that if you lived in the jungle, and I've said this before, if you lived in a jungle and there's 10 people in your community and one learns how to hunt really effectively, and so he's the food source. If your village were to fall under attack, who's the safest person in that village? The contributor.
Okay.
We're going to protect the contributor because if we lose a couple guys, that stinks. However, if we save our biggest contributor, we are all better for that person being a part. And we deep down understand that when we contribute, we're more valuable. When we consume, if there's one guy that's eating everybody's food in the village and they fall under attack, they might kill him. I mean, so even at our most base, primitive, primal layer, we think of ourselves as valuable when we contribute and a liability when we consume. So if you go to your job as a means to consume more, you're operating in a black hole. It's a pit. Your job can never give you enough to fulfill you because it is honestly like you are selling your soul to this job. You're doing things you don't want to do, and how much money is worth it in that moment. So by comparison, I love my job, but I don't get paid enough. I mean, you feel like, well, maybe not right now, but I feel like I'm building somewhere. I'm going somewhere. God's going to use me as a contributor to my community and to my church. Here's what else is crazy. My daughter is 8 years old. Hi, Chelsea Player. Hi, Goldblum. Hi, Keita Olson. A better workplace. Go out of your creativity. Start using your own business. You need to enjoy as much as your job or profession. Yes. My daughter is 8 years old. She's 8. And if I were to tell her, like, you need to be a giver, she'd be like, oh, you're okay.
Yeah.
But she's got a little bunny named Mika. You might know about this bunny.
I do.
Jacob caught it. She wakes up in the morning thinking of ways to give to this bunny. She's like, I'm going to build it a house. And I'm going to give it food. And I'm going to make it a little shirt. And like, when you love something, you give, period. I mean, end of the story. Like, if you love something, you are wired to give to it. Right. So when you love your community and you love the people that God has brought you in contact with, and you see yourself as being valuable to that community, you will naturally want to give. And you're like, well, what do I give from? Well, I go to my job, and at my job, I contribute there, but then I get a paycheck and I'm able to be a valuable member of what goes on here. You know, we've reached this many people, like we've built whatever, and I was a part of that. Well, what did you have to do? Did you have to build the building? No. Did you have to scrub the floors? No. What did you have to do? I got to be a mechanic, the thing I'm good at. I got to go do the thing that I'm good at And as a result, I got to contribute to something that's meaningful to me. Those are the people that are fulfilled in life, not the people who are, ugh, stupid job. And how could you give? If you already feel underpaid, how could you take a little out of that and contribute and make yourself valuable to a group of people if you already feel like you don't have enough?
Yeah.
So then you're like, I'm a consumer at work. I'm a consumer at my church. I'm a consumer in my family. And pretty soon we're struggling with depression and self-doubt and all these things that, because we're wired to go, wait, I'm not important.
What would you say to somebody just now getting into like choosing a career, or maybe they're 30 years into it and they want to change careers?
I'll say exactly what I would tell them. Find a problem and solve it for someone, and they will pay you for that. If you look for a problem, if you will go look for a problem, and Jason's in the room, so I'm gonna try to get through this without tearing up, but Jason had been through some stuff in his life. And Jason didn't say, well, what can I do to be the most prominent? He said, where's there a need? And then he did it. And he said one time, it's Dustin here, he said one time, he goes, I'm so grateful that there's something I can do that contributes. Jason, I promise you, gets more out of opening shoots, which everybody would have said like, oh, that's kind of a, nobody wants that job. Jason's like, I want that job. I want that job because if I can contribute, I'm valuable. Now we wouldn't think of having a rope without Jason and the crew. And he has a more fulfilling experience at a rope than most of the team ropers, probably all the team ropers, because he's a contributor, not a consumer. So if you're looking for a career, look for like, is there a problem that you have the ability to solve? Because if there's a problem you have the ability to solve, that's a gift, because it will give you a way to contribute. It will endear you to the people that you're solving the problem for, and you will get rewarded for that.
What parts of your job make you come alive, and what parts do you hate?
I've been pretty open about this. I don't think this is a surprise. Pastoring has always been hard for me. It's not a culture that I really connect with, as weird as that sounds. And I love pastors, but like, it's like the little, the duck that's in the park, and he's walking around. I was like, am I one of you? Am I one of you? Maybe, am I one of you? Like as a pastor, that's a struggle for me, because I see the sort of the kind, helpful, maternal aspect that a pastor takes on that I'm so naturally bad at. And I think in the back of my mind, I'm always struggling with, I'm like, am I a fake? Am I faking? Like, because I don't see anybody else that's a pastor that's like me that I can look at back. Oh, there I go. I'm one of those. So I just want to make sure that the people that I'm in charge of, or the people that I've been placed over, that they're being well taken care of, because I'm not a very good mom, to be completely honest, but I'm an okay dad. Like, I'm a good dad. And so I'm good at telling people rub some dirt on it, but sometimes people don't need to rub dirt on it. They need, that relational interaction. And I think our church does a good job of that. So that's my biggest struggle, is like, man, am I in the right profession? I'm not sure if that's something you're supposed to admit, but it does cross my mind.
Yeah.
The thing I like about it the most is I feel like God literally put me in his hand and dunked me underwater into pastoring. And as much as I've struggled, like, I'm here. This is where I'm at, and this is what he's got me doing. And now it's like he's starting to release the grip a little bit, and like, it's okay to be you in this profession. It's okay for you, like you are, to be here doing what I've called you to do, because you look at the fruits of, like, I feel like a tent pole a lot of times, because I create a space around me for people to do what they do, for them to contribute, for them to jump in. And I think it takes a certain personality to be a tent pole personality.
Right.
So I would say that's the thing I like the most, is watching people succeed around me.
Sure.
Watching people come into what's going on here and find a place and catch on and start like growing or developing, or it sounds stupid, but like, I'm not taking credit for this by any means, but like watching you buy a motorcycle. Sorry, Holly. I'm like, I love that God is creating spaces for people right here to live life and have experiences and like consider the next phase of life, whatever that might be, like,
Okay.
I said whatever that might be. I said the next phase of life,
listen,
like
right.
just life. That's the most rewarding part, is that God is building under the tent of Shiloh and the 1017 lives of people and careers and paths and legacies and things that we're going to look back on, years from now and go, we were there when that started. We were there. We were a part of that when it was like, at Rimrock.
Yeah. So coming from a place that, you find you don't necessarily love the, career as like an image or, as a endeavor or something, but do you find parts in it that I mean, you're contributing, you're finding you're a contributor. And so that is fulfilling. It's not necessarily like the work.
Well, and I think if I didn't understand the concept of work as a means to contribute instead of work as a means to consume, the truth is, as weird as this sounds, I don't get a ton of personal reward from my job in a traditional sense. It's not like I can go back to all my friends back. You know how we all wanted to be pastors? We did it. Like I don't know anybody that I could go like, hey, guess what? And they're like, oh, that's such a cool, like, I'm just not from that culture. And so, but it is a means to contribute. And I do see where people that are not necessarily church people are finding a home here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so as a means to contribute, as a way that God is like teaching me that I'm able to teach, because I think I'm a good communicator. I think I'm an okay speaker. I'm a great delegator, which to my own detriment. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I think God is, in my mind, reshaping what that means to be a pastor instead of shaping me to fit the mold of pastor, if that makes sense. Yeah. He's reestablishing what that role could look like. And I tried to comply. It's not that I've ever been rebellious about it or anything like that. I've just struggled to go like, God, I can't perform. I can't sing in front of people. Like I can't perform. I literally, like, my body physically will like seize up. I swear I will have like a physical reaction to anything that's performance-y. And so as a result, I'm like, I can't try to perform as pastor. I have to just be as honest as I know how to be. And Lacey laughs all the time because people are like, what's Jordan really like? It's like, literally, to know me for 5 minutes that's it. Yeah. I mean, I'm not all that deep. So there's no performance to it. Like, and so I guess what I'm saying is that gives people the opportunity to come in and go, well, if that guy is somehow in a position of authority around here, that means that God has got a place for me and I can look for an opportunity to contribute. I don't have to fit the mold of what it looks like to be I hate to use air quotes, but like a church person. Mm-hmm. We got questions. Yeah. You're just changing the stereotype of pastor. Jesus walked a different path than yours. Well, being one of thousands is no big deal, but being unique and starting a new method of teaching is awesome. I love that, Keto. Gail, what makes me come alive is helping others make a living for their families. What I like the least is when we don't have work. We all have to lay off sometimes. That is God's way of cleaning house. I'm never more miserable than when I'm bored. Like bored, I would rather be depressed than bored. I would rather be anxious than bored. I would rather be frustrated, mad. I would rather be a million things than bored. Bored is the one that I just, like, I feel like that's where it all kind of like culminates for me. So I'm with you. I like when I have something to do, but boredom is, that's a beauty.
See, with me, it's like boredom is what sparks my creativity.
Right.
I mean, if I'm just in, like, if there's always something to do, there's not a whole lot of new coming into it. For me personally, so new video ideas or whatever it is, it's almost like boredom has to hit in order for me to have time
you have to almost manufacture it.
Yeah.
Like manufacture a space with nothing competing for your time.
Yeah. Cause it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so so immediately my brain goes into what can I do? And it's like a useful tool.
Yeah.
I've found.
I feel like that Lacey manufactures downtime. She likes downtime. And maybe I'm getting a little better at downtime without feeling boredom. But that's where somebody was saying the other day that's why the U.S. will always, as long as we're free, lead in innovation. Because innovation is a result of freedom. You can't chain someone to a tree and point a gun at their head and say, think of a good idea. Like compulsion can never create creativity, right? And so like with you, what you're saying is you found, just in conversation, I just know it to be true, is that you found there are times when creativity is really flourishing and there's times where it's really, what's the word?
Bogged down.
Yeah, definitely. So,
what Joe talked about sabbaticals in his sermon. Do you take sabbaticals, or what is a good work/play balance?
It's a good question. We have never taken a full on like real deal sabbatical,
like a month at a time kind of deal.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to, I think with the online, what people maybe don't realize is how much easier our job has become with the use of online. Like our schedule can actually be kind of moved around a little bit. So to take a sabbatical, I could literally have sermons recorded, take a month if I ever needed it and be gone. And it wouldn't be like, where's Jordan for a month? Where before I always felt kind of responsible for that. And so it's coming. We've got some stuff. We got some stuff planned that's like, we'd like to be able to do some stuff like that in the future. But I think it's important. 1,500 people leave the occupational ministry every month.
1,500 every month?
Every month. And the number one reason for that is burnout.
Do 15 come into it every month?
It's a good question. I don't know.
Okay.
But I doubt it. I mean, it's not like Christianity in the U.S. has really just been on an uptick. But burnout is they go and they go and they go and they go and they go. Like if the enemy can't convince you to hit the brake, he'll just stomp on the gas until there's nothing left. And they said that 95% of white collar moral failures, judges, pastors, it's time to turn the sprinkler off in the arena, that 95% of white collar moral failures, the people weren't taking a day off. They just got so empty that the first thing that comes along that seems like relief of any sort, they make decisions they would have never made before because there was a lack of rest. And honestly, like you're that like I'm at work, I gotta keep working. Because if I don't, then you've lost what it means to be a contributor. Because a contributor means you have to have something to offer. Like when I show up, I don't get and I think this is a big one to go to your original point. I can't get my identity from what I do. This is a Jamie Winship concept. Yeah. I have to take my identity to my role. Like my identity is not that I'm a dad.
Right.
I'm Jordan, and I have to know what that looks like for Jordan to be a dad in that role. Like, what does it look like for me to bring my identity to a role instead of getting my identity from the role?
Interesting.
And I think that's been a real big advantage because a lot of people, they take their identity from like, well, I'm a pastor. Like, I guess what pastors do, I guess they go to a lot of conferences or something. I don't know. But not taking identity from your work, taking your role taking your identity into your role allows you to keep contributing without feeling like that you can ever pull back and take a break. I feel like I'm over talking that one.
We got a question. I can't remember if we went over it or not. Paige asks, if you don't have a job but need one / want a job, are you the only one stopping yourself from getting one?
I think we have really undervalued what it means, again, to contribute. Like, there's always opportunities to contribute. Is there a job that's going to fulfill you and pay you and give you your time off? And I would say that's what my generation started, and your generation has taken the ball and run with it, is this job just really meeting your needs?
Right.
I mean, I don't know. What does that mean? What does that mean to have somebody completely fill your needs, a job fill your needs? That's not what they even do. But if you can find somewhere to contribute and make an impact, there's always people that need it. I mean, there's not a place that would turn down volunteers that would want to come in and just love on people. And if you're wanting to rub shoulders with really important people, or like the high ups, those jobs aren't always there because that's a consumption thing. You're like, oh, look at me, I'm around important people. I want to be an intern. Like, right. I don't have interns. And the reason I don't have interns is because I don't have interns because nobody wants to be an intern. People want to like be around what they perceive to be like.
Right. They don't actually care about helping.
No. Right.
Interesting.
If you want to go be an intern to someone who like doesn't have a house or has a disability. Go be that person's intern. You're like, what? That's not nearly. You can contribute at a much greater scale being an intern of someone who can't get themselves out of bed in the morning. You see what I mean? And all of a sudden you're like, do I really have a heart to contribute?
That's a good point, because a knee-jerk reaction to the word job is the idea that you get paid for a service. But, is volunteering a job? Or you just said find a need and fill the need. But if you don't get paid, is that a job?
This is what I love about this. It's new questions. Like, hopefully the people that are watching, like, I would hope that it's at least new questions of like, I don't think I think of work that way. And like, we've got to live. I mean, you got to have some sort of income. I get that. But if you really want to make the world a better place, the options are endless. Mm-hmm. If you just want to get paid more and more and more and more, where does that end? Where does that take you? I mean, are rich people happy, generally speaking? No. I heard the other day, like, billionaires, every billionaire said they never hate their job. Like, I don't want to be like the people that I see that are billionaires. Mm-hmm. I want to be like the guy who feeds his family and raises his kids and is there and, like, pays his mortgage on time and mows his yard and is a contributor to society. Of course a billionaire is going to say that. What do you expect a billionaire not to have the pride to be like, no, I hate it. I hate everything about this.
And I think billionaires don't even really work at some point. They just kind of sit there and get money.
Yeah, as though that's like the gold standard. Like, if this job can make you rich, and your job, honestly, spoiler alert, everybody listening, your job is not going to make you rich. It's going to be your investments. It's going to be, does your money work for you? It's never going to be how hard do you work, or is your job paying you enough? Your job is never going to pay you enough to make you rich, ever.
Do you see an investment can be time? Like, do you see sometimes time as an investment?
Well, like flipping houses. Usually if you don't have money, what you have is time. And when you have money, what you don't have is time. So it's kind of a scale. It's like a teeter-totter. Like if you have one, you don't have the other a lot of times. But if you want to get rich, if that's like your goal, you need to study investments, not jobs. I mean, you need to find a job that you enjoy where you can say like, hey, I'm making an impact and I'm contributing and I'm using this job to contribute to this job. I think that's why the people get started investing and they enjoy it, is because they work over here, they make some money and they invest that, they give that. This job allowed them to invest over here. See, now all of a sudden they appreciate their job because this job is what's funding this, and all of a sudden it's like, passive income. Just a little financial advice from Pastor Jordan. That's not even Dave Ramsey. Didn't even have to pay for it. But that like, oh, I'm going to be rich. It's never going to happen just from working. It's never going to be because you work so many hours. Because the problem is, if you're working by the hour, you have the same amount of hours as everybody else. There's nothing you can do to create extra hours in the day. You're only going to make what you can get paid. Should a person contribute by doing something else they're passionate about, or contribute any way possible? That to me is what Jason Graham has been such a demonstration of. Is Jason's like, hey, I'm not sure how much of his details I'm allowed to give away. He said, this is what I can do. I can show up. I can volunteer here. That's what I can do. Great. I mean, people's time is so valuable. And so, Alan, to your point, God has put everybody in a position to contribute. It's just sometimes we're not there in our minds. We're not there to contribute. We're there to dance the dance so that God has to give us what we're entitled to. And now God's turned into the job that we use to consume. God, how much do I have to do before you'll bless me? And God's like, you don't understand. Like the blessing, the value that you have in your life comes from being a contributor. And if that's not the case, there's nothing you can give that I could ever reward you with that would ever be enough. You're going to be one of those super happy billionaires.
Yeah.
The rate of suicide is the highest in upper class white communities. White upper class communities, highest suicide rate. What does that tell you?
They're doing something wrong.
I mean, that alone is not something to aspire to. Rich, money or peace of mind and contentment. I'm rich, just don't have a lot of money. I'm right there with you, Keto. Man, I used to say all the time, like, they say that winning the lottery would ruin your life. I'm like, yeah, but I'd like to try just once.
Yeah.
Just give me a shot. I think I'd be okay.
Yeah.
I'd be the guy that has like 93 Buicks or something like that. Like, it would be so stupid.
Buicks?
I mean, I don't know. You hear people got like, they grew up and all they wanted was like a Honda. Like, that was like their big goal. And they win the lottery, so they buy 100 Hondas. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong with the knee jerk of like, I'd like to know what that would feel like. But the truth is, if everybody that later in life says that that's what wealth really was time and family and things like that, why are they all saying it? There's got to be something to it. That generation is giving us hey, we've been there. We know, like, this is what value really holds. Like, at some point, we'd have to at least consider it.
This is some technical reading, so forgive me if I read it wrong and stumble through it. But Martin Luther, a German reformer, taught a lot about breaking down the artificial divide between sacred and secular work. In God's economy, all work done in faith should be seen as a vocation, literally a call from God on our lives. Luther refers to our work as the masks of God. The following quote is from Luther's exploration in Psalms 147 in Luther's Works, Volume 14. God could easily give you grain and fruit without your plowing or planting, but he does not want to do so. What else is all our work to God, whether in fields, in the garden, in the city, in the house, in war, or in government, but just such as a child's performance, by which he wants to give his gifts in the field, at home, and everywhere else. These are the masks of God, behind which he remains concealed and does all things. Luther also says about Psalms 147, how does God make cities secure? By being a good neighbor, we give the gift of security in our city. God could wave his hand and do it all for us, but he chooses to love us through people's work.
I feel like that probably just should have been the podcast, because Martin Luther is so much smarter than I am. But there's a dignity aspect to work. And that's what I think that goes back to, like, what he's saying. I clunkily bounce around, but when God gives you something, it's like when my kids were little and I was like, hey, I got a job for you. And they're like, okay. They're like 3. I'm like, I need you to sit right here on this truck and make sure that this rope doesn't fall off. And they're like, okay, got it. What am I doing? I'm giving them dignity. I'm letting them feel like that what they're doing is important. I saw something the other day that said that someone's grandparents used to ask their neighbors for salt. They're like, you have salt. Why are you asking? They go, because our neighbors come over to us and ask for stuff all the time because they're poor. Salt is super inexpensive. So when I go to them and I ask them for salt, I'm letting them know that there is a back and forth. So the next time they need something, they know to come ask me. Does that make sense? I think a lot of times what God's doing is he's allowing us to work. And when we think of like clocking in, clocking out, I hate this, I wish I was doing something else, we're missing the opportunity to be a vessel, like a reach of God's hands into that area where we're working. Now, like I said, I think if people, that's why tithe is so deeply misunderstood, is that people don't see that a contribution is the result of loving something. My daughter doesn't give her rabbit stuff because I make her or because I made her read the rabbit handbook.
Right.
She just loves it. And the response to love is contribution. And where you invest, that's where your heart goes. And if that job is what allows you to make an impact and contribute to something meaningful to the kingdom, giving should be like the most natural response. And then at the same time, here I am a pastor, and I already know that people are like, you're just saying give the rabbit stuff because that's the rabbit rules. I'm like, you just got to decide, like, do you work because you need, or do you work because you want to contribute? And that's, I mean, it's a fundamental shift. It is an East versus West shift on exactly what Martin Luther said. He could give you grain, but instead he gives you the dignity of being like a partner. In the garden, he gave them the job of like taking care of the animals, take care of the garden. Why? Because there's dignity in contribution. There is dignity in contribution. I'm not sure if I could say that there's dignity in consumption. I mean, I know love is the process of giving out and taking in, but there's so much more dignity when you're contributing. You're so much more valued. You're so much more loved. You can justify meaning to yourself through contribution. When you're stuck in the mindset of consumption, which is what our country is kind of like built on right now, the chaos that we're struggling is everybody's become consumers. Which, by the way, that's the harmful part of capitalism. You know, it gets attacked for a lot of things, but making people into consumers instead of contributors is probably the most harmful.
Where in the Bible has God talked about like work? Can you think of any?
I wish I could find that
Or
place
like
in Isaiah. There's
Tell somebody
No.
about it.
No, I'd have to look. But everywhere you look, Jesus was a carpenter. Like I said, Jesus was a carpenter, fisherman, you know, and when Jesus goes to the disciples, he says, cast your nets. What's he doing? He's putting his contribution into their labor. And it was so meaningful that Peter realizes, oh man, I'm in the presence of God, and says, get away from me. I'm a sinful man. I have a love-hate relationship with my job. I collect revenue for the state. I feel like people screen my calls. Yeah. But here's the thing. If I have to get a call from that office, do I want to get it from somebody who's mad at the world, or do I want to get it from Kathy, who has the ability to, hey, I realize this call is difficult, so I'm being like kind and generous and loving. Kathy gets to bring herself to that role that's difficult, and gets to be a light in what would be otherwise a difficult phone call. See, if she needs people to, hey, how's it going? How are you doing? Then that job's always going to rob from her. But if she goes in intending to contribute, then even the difficult situation of making difficult calls can be a blessing. It can be an avenue to contribute.
Yeah, that's spot on.
So I think it's a mindset. I think you got to make up your mind, like, am I a contributor or am I a consumer? Because if I'm a consumer, no job will ever be enough. And nobody ever got rich consuming anyway.
So what if you're in well, I mean, you mentioned find something to do, but I mean, what if you have a family and you have a career going and you hate it and you feel trapped?
I don't think you have to change jobs. I think if your mindset changes, if that's where God's got you, your mindset changes. He might take you right back into the exact same job tomorrow, but you look at it differently. And all of a sudden said, I hate this job because it doesn't reward me the way I wanted to be rewarded. You go, God already rewarded me. My life was already better than I deserved. Is there a way I could take that into this job and actually start to turn the tide within the exact same job rather than I need a new job? Because I need a new job is the same as I need a new wife. I need a new house. I need a new car. I need new. New would be better. Old can't ever be fixed. And I think God takes so much pride in sending us back into the old and creating new within the old. So I think, I mean, if you're there like, oh, I hate my job. Well, try it. Go in with that mindset. Like, I'm going to contribute here And as a result, I'm going to get to contribute over here with that paycheck instead of just spending it and like trying to make myself happy. It's a weekend. I'm going to go spend my whole paycheck to try to be happy so I can do it all over again. Like what a death spend that is. But if you go, okay, I'm going to get paid on Friday. I'm going to take that and I'm going to contribute over here. I'm going to give this to this person. I'm going to do this with this. And then I'm going to go back on Monday. I'm going to look for ways to contribute Monday to Friday. I mean, your whole outlook on that job could change. This table's very wobbly.
It's very wobbly.
It's very wobbly.
It's very wobbly.
Love to educate people on how to be successful paying their debt and turn the attitude. See, and that's what I'm saying. Like you can go into a difficult job, Kathy, and you be the tide. Like if there are people that are just so full of joy that no matter what the circumstances are, they walk in, it improves. I would love to be that kind of person. I'm not, but I'd like to be.
Yeah.
Keto said, a contributor gives bounty, a consumer takes bounty. Yep.
When you find people that are, it's like
it's inspiring.
It's inspiring.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree. And those are always the most loved people. The contributors are always the most loved people in the room. If you want to be deeply, deeply, deeply loved by the people around you, be the biggest contributor in the room.
It almost ties back to, I think we've talked about this before, but sharing Jesus with people. There's, some places and situations tell you to like go out and do it and find people and you have a quota and all that kind of stuff. Or there's a way of saying, just love people and when they're ready, they'll come to you.
Yeah.
Having joy in your job can be that.
Yeah.
I mean, I just know that I feel like I'm pretty joyful, but then when I see people that are incredibly joyful, all I want to do is
be around them.
Like, tell me about you and everything about you.
Yeah, it's like a tractor beam. Like when you see somebody that's joyful and loving and a contributor, it draws people to you. Like there's no way. And I think sometimes people spend all that money they made all week pursuing acceptance, pursuing love, and because they can't. There's something's broken about this system. There's something about this system that doesn't work and I can't figure it out. And all of a sudden things change and they become contributors and everything they were pursuing starts to come to them. And it's like,
Yeah.
Mike Howerson said, I never hated my job. Dealing with my fellow employees was always a struggle. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I'm telling you, like I'm that changed it for me instead of, I don't get paid enough for the things I don't want to do. It's everywhere I go. God has given me more than I could ever. And here's the other thing. It's good to remember. At the end of the day, God could snap his fingers and change your circumstances.
Right.
If you're following God and things aren't changing, there's a good chance God is teaching you something in that season. What kindergartner went to school is like, I love it after about 1:00 in the afternoon, this school thing.
This is really cool.
This is great. And yet parents just send their kids off to school. Why? Because in the end, the pain was worth it, right? What we get out of the process of education is worth it on the back end. And how many times we don't even give God that exact same credit of like, maybe God has me here learning something that he's going to use later in life. We write God out of the whole process. I hate this job. I got to do something else instead of going like, God, you know where I'm at. You know me.
Yeah.
You know this is terrible.
Yeah,
so
this is awful.
how can I contribute until you get me out of this? Some industries attract rough individuals. I was in the oil field for a while, Mike. I couldn't agree more. I sell food to restaurants in Madras, Silver Lake. Only in the last few months has my job been tough. The supply chain is very challenging, but we've all made our customers the most amazing, which makes my job the job I love. I feel like such a contributor to their success. Yes. It doesn't, when you start thinking of it like this, everybody on this list can start thinking of everything that they do for work. With this mindset, it doesn't matter what you do. You can be like, I could be a contributor. I could be a contributor. Oh, wait a minute. It is literally a check valve. I remember one time where I used to install sprinkler systems and it was hot and you had to do it by hand and we had a trencher but it never worked, and so you had what's called a check valve, and a check valve goes into a pipe, and the reason it goes into a pipe is they don't want the water to drain back. They want the water to go one direction to the sprinkler and then not come back. And so you put a check valve, that means water can only flow through it one direction. I think that's exactly what we're talking about, is like which direction, because if you get that backwards, water can't go the direction it's supposed to go. The water never gets to the sprinkler if the check valve's backwards. So it's got the little arrow that says water's supposed to go this way, right? So when you put a check valve in, you're like spiritually, you put a check valve that says, I'm here to contribute. And you have a bad day, you're like, well, it wasn't supposed to be coming back. I'm here to give out. I'm going to go home. I'm going to spend time with God. I'm going to go figure out what he's got in my life. I'm going to love my kids. I'm going to love my wife. I'm going to go back to work tomorrow full, and they can have it all. And I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to do it again until eventually I'm the biggest contributor in my job. It's a check valve. You never expect it to come back.
Yeah.
You go intending to go out, and it changes the whole scope of everybody. Any job you've got, when that check valve is pointing the right direction, there's an opportunity to contribute.
So is there a balance in that? because my first reaction is
People take advantage of it.
or burnout.
Yeah.
Of like, if you don't get anything back, I mean, is the thing you get back the feeling of,
Well, it's where you get it from.
okay,
The check valve goes out because the source with the check valve in this analogy, the check valve, the source is behind you. The water pump is behind you. And the water pump, the source of water is behind you, and it always goes this way, right? So your source cannot be your job. The burnout, and I think that's the thing about burnout is we give and give and give, and we think the church is somehow magically going to start giving back and we're going to be okay.
Right.
You're like, no. The church is not my source, which is why I can cut off every now and then and go be somewhere and like love my family and like let God recharge my batteries because God is my source. And you're like, well, I don't know what that looks like. New challenge. There you go. There's the challenge in your life. Go figure out what it's like to let God recharge your batteries so that then you have something else to give. Because if you're looking for the thing that you give to give back to you, you're no longer a contributor. It is literally just a means of consumption. It says, I'm going to prime the well a little bit, but really I need more than I'm going to give out. It's a one-way street. I'm here to contribute, not to consume.
what would you recommend if somebody doesn't necessarily know how they refuel, or how to get it from
Let me
God?
say this.
Okay.
I don't have to teach my daughter how to love her rabbit. Okay. She loves Mika as much as anything in the whole world. I don't have to teach it to her. Now, Mika might scratch her face or something and like she has a bad day or something like that, right? But the process is not getting it right, so to speak. The process is a willingness to spend time. When you're willing to go to God and go, God, I'm all messed up. My job is not giving like I wanted. My marriage was not giving me like I wanted. My kids are not rewarding me like I am a black hole. I am a black hole, and everybody I'm around, I just suck the life out of them because nothing is ever enough. And you go to God and you go, I want that to turn around. I don't want to be a black hole anymore. I want to be a contributor. I want to learn what it means to go to you, get what I need so that I can be able to distribute it. I mean, it's a process that instantly starts going the right direction. Boy, you don't really have to get it right, so to speak, because once you get to that point, if I want to be a contributor, not a consumer, it's already, you're halfway there.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, we should clip out that last little bit because that's the whole point of the podcast right there. Interesting. Well, everybody, thank you so much for being here and listening. Make sure your check valve is in the right direction. And have a great day. See you guys.